Great lunch. We're going to be talking about engineering change management today. And unfortunately, you can't manage change for an engineer. Everybody resists change, they say. But we're going to be talking about engineering change management, meaning when we change revisions or methods or materials on a part, how do we manage that change and how do we control what we're doing here? So in order to do ECN or ECO control, we're going to take a look at the part and the revision settings, as this is going to impact it. Then we're going to look at the ECO and the engineering workbench process. This is going to be the bulk of our discussion for today. We're also going to talk about workflows, task sets, and tasks. When I do an engineering change, what is required in the engineering change? Do I just update the drawings? Do I just update the part operations and push it back out for people to use? Or does it go through a proper workflow inside your organization? Do I need to make sure that the drawings are reviewed and they are correct? Does an engineering manager look over and say, yep, you did this correctly and the parts are right? Does a manufacturing engineer need to look over the bill of operation to make sure, yes, we have the resources, we can perform this work even before the part gets checked in? And does the engineering go through a standard workflow every time, or do we allow people just to check it out to their name and shove it back in when it's done? A lot of people go the second route. Larger companies and people that require more tracking and traceability will go the first route. We're going to be talking about using the first row. How do we use task sets and workflows to make sure that things are adhered to a proper procedure? Those workflows and task sets are also going to flow over into quotations, case management. So while we're going to talk about them for engineering, keep it in the back of your mind that you can use this in other areas as well. We're also going to take a look at the part tracker, but the key area that I find for engineering change is the part advisor. And adding some of the part advisor information to the engineering workbench is something we recommend to a lot of people. You don't necessarily need to customize your world, because we can take the information that Epicor already wrote behind the part advisor and tag that right onto the ECO, so the engineer has visibility to things before they even check the part in. So kicking that off, we're going to take a look at part revision. And the part revision, there are a few crucial areas. What is my revision? I find a lot of people just use 0, letter A, in it. This can be your customer revision as well if you're a custom manufacturer. If you're making your own product, you're going to have your revision and control and assignment to it. If it's a customer specified item, we should probably use the customer's revision. Down below here, we have the ECO group. This is if it is checked out to engineering, who's working on it and what engineering change order is it part of. The date of effectiveness, when does this part become effective? When does this revision take over? I'm not a big fan of having multiple approved revisions in the system, but as long as the effective dates don't overlap, I'm not too worried about it. It does impact some of the other Epicor areas, such as when MRP runs, when part detail and part suggestions are calculated, that having multiple effective approved parts with different dates still comes into play. Not all the areas of Epicor pay attention to that yet. Here in the middle, is the part even approved? Meaning, can I manufacture it? Can I sell it? And over here, as you see on our sample here in Epicor, there are no comments. So why did revision A get created? What were the things that were done to it last that said, hey, this is going to be usable on July 4th of 2021? The engineer is not leaving themselves any breadcrumbs or notes as to what they did inside the engineering revision comment. This is a great place to leave yourself a breadcrumb trail so that you know why you made the changes you did, who requested the changes, were they approved? If the revision's approved, yes, but that may not have been everybody that approved it. But these comments are going to be crucial and they stay with the part and they flow through the whole system. So do be careful. You can't turn around and say Tom's a dork, because that's going to show up on a job travel. The part settings, once we have this set up, when we check out a part revision to work on it, Epicor is going to ask us what ECO group and description should this be attached to. Now, they have a function to create a new ECO, or we can search using the little magnifying glass and paper icon to go search for an ECO group that's already in the system. Most people I know just have an ECO under their own username. They'll put their name in it. That means they worked on it and put it back in. That does not have any control behind the revision. That's just that somebody pulled it out, worked on it, and put it back in. For the new ECO versus the selection, when I do the search for a selection, it's going to show me, hey, these are all the ECOs that we have in the system current. And as we see in this, some of the ECOs are really old. And they just continue on and on. Having this is not too much of a problem. I may have a DMT ECO group that I utilize for the DMT tool to mass load engineering revision. I can turn around and export my CAD files from SolidWorks or AutoCAD, have those CSV files automatically loaded with the DMT tool. The DMT will have to masquerade as one of the ECO people. Otherwise, you will have to turn around and create an ECO for each time you run the DMT. That may be possible if your DMT is all regarding one part and its family of subassemblies. The other would be doing a new ECO group where I would specify the group ID. This is where I can give it a number and a tracking behind it. You can check out more than one part to one ECO group. So if I want to work on a family of 10 parts, I can check them all out to the same ECO, make sure they're all correct and ready before I check the whole thing in. I give it my description, I give it its ECO number itself, not necessarily just the group ID, and then I mark, is it single user? If I leave the group in multi-user mode, anybody can work on it at the same time. Whoever hits the save button last is the one that commits. Again, not a big fan of not having single user control on an engineering change. Literally because whoever checks the part in last or hits save last is the one that turns around and gets to win and save all their changes. The workflow, we're actually going to get into discussing workflow groups and task sets. So for my engineering, I could say this is a Department of Defense workflow, and this is the task set inside that workflow group that I'm going to ensure we follow while we're doing the engineering behind this. Can the user check out? Can they check in? Is the workflow complete yet? What date is this ECO to be completed by? I created mine for a couple days ago. The date it actually gets completed is when someone checks the workflow complete box and says, hey, this is done, go ahead and put it in. The date they close it here will update over on the far right-hand side. The effective date is when this revision or all the parts within this ECO become effective. So if I'm only doing one part in an ECO, what I put in the effective date here will flow down to that part's revision. If I have 10 parts and I check them all in, all of them get this effective date assigned to them. Again, I have my comments field and I should be leaving myself a breadcrumb trail to know what did I do in this revision? Why did I change it? What was the total impact that was going on? And yes, I use that fun word impact because we're going to talk about that one here a little later today. So I'm going to go ahead and hop over here. I've got a question or a comment here from Bruce Larson. Turning the audit log on for a revision is also a good place for putting the breadcrumbs. Doesn't have to be in the comment, can also be in our audit log that the system is storing for each of the revisions. So for the ECO, once I create my ECO, I can add one or multiple parts to that ECO group. Everything is stored behind it, and then I open my parts up into the engineering workbench. All the parts that I have are going to show up in the list over here. I can look at it just one. If I'm using the classic interface, you need to go to the revision tab and the list tab to see all of the parts. But I can see the part in the revision. When this opens up, I see all of that detail again here. I also see all of the revisions and parts across the bottom now. So in Kinetic, it's a little easier to see what all parts are on my engineering workbench. The overflow menu is going to be very similar to what was on the actions menu and the tools menu options inside Epicor Classic. But from here, I can have attachments. I can turn around full screen, I can refresh, I can add new, I can approve everything, or I can say approve and check in all the parts that are on this ECO. For each part that I have selected here on the bottom, I can look at what are the costs behind it. I can go ahead and approve or approve and check in one part in the group. Doesn't have to be everything that I checked out to the group yet. Next is this task tab. Because I chose the workflow group Department of Defense and external ECO process, Epicor added the tasks that make up that task set. That task set here is assign the engineering group. This is the person it's assigned to. Step 20, document the proposed changes that are to be completed. Contact for engineering acceptance. These are the steps this engineering change is supposed to go through before the parts are approved and checked in. Now, yes, I can put this information in here. Over here, for every one of these tasks, it shows me the status of where that task is, the customer or the supplier that's involved with it, any people either at customer, supplier, or internally, engineers or manufacturing engineers that are going to be responsible for working on this, and then again, comments for this. It shows me the description of the task that was assigned. It's an action item. Is it complete? And is this mandatory? Is the workflow automatically completed? Is this part of a milestone, meaning it's going to move on to the next task? When we mark it complete, it's going to give us an option of what's the reason for doing it, what's the next task this move on to. If I look at this and say I've already completed task 20 as well as 10, I can turn around and say my next task is now contact, go ahead and complete it. Down here on the bottom, it's going to say who's assigned to handle this task, any internal contacts, the status of the task, when did they get assigned and start the task, what time is it scheduled to start, and when's it due and by what time. Over here on the right-hand side of the engineering task is what's the priority of this task and how much am I complete? So I may say I've assigned the engineering group to start looking at this and we're going through it and evaluating, we're only 50% done. These tasks show up in the Epicor task list system. There's an entire system for managing tasks that are assigned to people inside the organization. Those task lists are managed here in task list maintenance. I would see a list of all of the tasks that are assigned to me, all of the people in info. The exact same fields that were up on the engineering task screen are also over here. But this task list also gives me the ability to look at more information, what's going on, and more details. As well, I can turn around and process my tasks from the task list. So when I log into this and look at the list view can show me what is supposed to be started, show me all the tasks that are due by this day that are assigned to me or the team that I'm in. What's the ECO number for it? What's its current stage? So I can say, show me all the level status 10s, show me all the status 20s, show me all the 30s together so that I can look and monitor what I have to keep moving forward. Shows me the status and the priority, and as well my percentage complete. This grid in Classic is actually easier for sorting and grouping by the columns. The filtering is still there, but the sorting and grouping, I think, is a little stronger in the Classic interface. The other thing is it shows me my age and importance of this. So if this is a high priority or high importance, I can have the grid show me those to process first. A customer requested engineering change or an investigation into a warranty that may be a defective design, I may prioritize that higher than just getting a new part entered into the system. These tasks make it much easier for the engineer to look at, hey, this is my day, this is what I have to do and track. For customer service and case management or quality and case, and for sales reps, the tasks are the exact same thing. For a sales engineer, it's I have to enter the quote, I have to price the quote, I have to complete the engineering, I have to send the quote to the client. Those task steps make it much easier for a sales rep or a salesperson to turn around and see what's where in my pipeline to make sure that they keep things moving through. And how long did it take to quote the customer? Same for an engineer. How long did it take them to get the engineering change processed and put through? The list view here in the task is a very powerful tool for organizing your day. So my ECO and ECN, I can turn around and take this and put this out there. The ECO and the ECN, do we just accept it and push it through? Production said, hey, we need to change the engineering standard. It's no longer 100 pieces per hour, it's 150. Machine is running faster, let's go ahead and update that info. Do we just take that information and move it out to the engineering? If I do put that as a change to the engineering, that works great. What if I have 10 jobs that are currently running? Do I need to go and fix those one by one? You're never going to run get details again on a running job, possibly. You may need to fix those manually. If I'm doing something that's along the lines of a warranty recall, how many times have I manufactured it and shipped it? What's my exposure if we do a change that's a design flaw on our behalf? If it's a customer failure, are they paying for the change? What's the financial impact of how much I have in inventory, how much I have in work in process already? Taking a look at the current inventory on the part tracker, the part tracker is going to be a great place to see my on hand and where it is. Part Advisor will also show me the how much I have on hand, but I may want to know exactly where that is in the process and where it is on the floor if I need to quarantine something. Having visibility, the engineer should be looking at this before they just accept an engineering change and push it through. The inventory to be reviewed. The part tracker is a great way to see this on the activity tab inside that part tracker. Another place, if I look at time phase, I would also see, hey, what's my inventory settings? What's my current balance? What do I have in open sales orders, jobs, or purchase orders affecting this part? Again, back to our impact analysis, do I need to contact a vendor and have them stop work on POs? Do I need to contact customers and say, hey, we have an engineering problem with this item, your order's going to be delayed until we correct it? What's the financial impact of that? In the past, I did have a customer that engineers just pushed it through, and engineers would tell inventory clerks to scrap inventory. Well, that works real fine and dandy until your inventory costs more than $100,000 a part. Nobody was evaluating that. The impact analysis when we're doing an engineering change is crucial. What are my settings on the part? Time phase is going to show me that a little bit easier, as well as if I'm moving this between plants. So my time phase, my part tracker, these are all going to show me areas that tell me what this part is doing. What do I have to pay attention to? The number one place that I really like with engineering change is the part advisor. I have my on-hand tab, show me all my inventory, what's going on with it. Is there anything in a picked or allocated state? The part advisor is also going to tell me, have I put this on any quotes that I may need to go contact that salesperson and say, hey, we have a design change and that's going to affect the costing that you're putting behind your quote. Or have I sold this before and now I have to look at how many people do we have a potential warranty recall on? The produced is going to show me, have I got any on jobs right now running and how many have I made in the past? The profitable probably doesn't really apply to the engineering change order, but the first 4 tabs are going to come into play heavily. Each one of these tabs is nothing more than a BAQ dashboard that can be added to the engineering workbench. So after I see my comment tab, I may want to put these additional tabs so I can do an impact analysis. I also have clients that will turn around and export this to Excel or print a screen image and attach that screen image to the engineering change so they know what was the impact at the time this occurred. If you have a lot of transactions, it's probably not going to fit in one little picture, but then we may need to have a report or some type of analysis that gets exported. But before an engineer puts through a change, we should look at what is the total financial impact across all the parts that are going to be affected by this change before we just accept it. How much am I telling people to throw in a garbage can? Who's paying for the work in process that we're going to have to scrap or possibly rework? So making sure that we know what's going on in our engineering before we do this, taking a look at that part advisor. Now, we can also look at purchase advisor if anybody is putting engineering on their purchased parts or changing revisions of a purchased part. We may want to look at the exact same thing, but that would then be on the purchase advisor, not on the part advisor. Do I have any on order currently? Do I have to change those POs? Making sure that we know this engineering change, it's going to impact a few things, and we want to make sure how we're going to handle that before we just accept it. Once the parts are all completed, we go all the way back to the beginning where we approve the parts in the ECO before we check it in. But we should have a full visibility of what happened, why did we accept it? Can I use the comments for a lot of the notes? Can I use the audit logs? Yes. Can I put memos behind it? Yes. There are a lot of things and areas that we can put this information. We just need to make sure that we're collecting it and looking at it before we accept an engineering change. So change management is fairly simple. One of the number one customizations we get requested for is a BPM that looks out to the ECO system and assigns the next number to it, and that's how we control the numbering sequence. Larger companies that have more organized engineering departments may have an engineering change log, or they'll have an ECM logbook where they keep track of what are they doing. By keeping track of it, I hope there's not a lot of engineers on the session today, but how much work are you putting through in a time frame? If I start tracking these ECOs and how many parts are on an ECO, I know how much work they're actually doing as throughput. Am I putting through 2 parts a month or am I putting through 200? That also helps determine, do I need additional resources in engineering? Bruce has a comment here, adding a checkbox on the revision stating a first run is accepted allows you to have a custom traveler or PO or a PPM that pops up an alert. So is this the first time I'm running this after the engineering change was made? Do I put a watermark on the job traveler to say first run after an ECO? So engineering change is not that difficult. I find a lot of people don't do it. They just do the express checkout. They put it in the person's user ID of Epicor, they make their changes and they push the part back in without evaluating how this is going to impact the whole organization. While that is the fast and quick way for engineering to do it, it may not be the smartest way for them to do it. I'm going to go ahead and throw this out now. I know we're a lot a bit early, but are there any questions on controlling engineering change, tracking what we're putting through and making it visible so that we know what are we doing with engineering? Isaac is asking if I can show the view cost, but Bruce, I wasn't going to go that far into it with case management, but so here I have my part pulled up. I'm taking a look at this. This part actually has 2 co-parts, but when I go ahead and view the cost, Epicor is going to tell me how much does it cost to make this part. Do I only look at the assemblies? The maximum level that I go, how many am I using? This is now going to take into account additional part settings such as lot sizes. Do I have to incur a double lot size to make this many parts? Do I incur multiples? Then I'm going to have another setup charge every time I reach that quantity.
And from Kazoo, Sorry if you mentioned it before, are workflows, task sets, and tasks part of the standard Epicor modules?
Because you need to have the CRM module to activate the tasks and workflows. So
And
while they are here, you have to have the CRM module to turn that on.
can we have a method not yet released being able to be used in a quote?
I would just not mark the part as approved or effective yet. If the part's not approved, you can't manufacture it. If the part doesn't have an effective date yet, say the part's not effective until March 1st. When I go to put this on a sales order, it's not going to pull that revision in.
And from Tracy, we are currently one of those that have ECO groups by person and simply check out, approve, and check back in. Can you give examples and or share best practices for when and why to create new ECO groups?
If you're going to change form, fit, or function, I would say there should be traceability and tracking for it. If all I'm doing is changing a comment on the part operation and I'm improving the process with a note, but I'm not changing the production standard, I'm not changing a quantity of raw material, I would turn around and say, definitely, that's okay to check out to yourself. I also see people use the checkout because they don't know how to look at the method tracker. The method tracker is a read-only place to look at the engineering behind a part. You can't change the engineering there. If all they're doing is looking at information that's just not visible on the other screens, go ahead and use the method tracker instead of checking the part out to your name. Checking the part out and checking it back in, actually Epicor is pulling that ECO out and putting the ECO back in and tracking the activity of how many times that part went in and out. But if you're going to change the structure of the part, how the part is being manufactured, well, we find out, hey, it works better if we actually drill the holes before we try to shove the bolts through it. Well, this is probably going to change your product. Is that going to change your warranty? Because now we have parts in the field that could have been damaged by forcing them. Now I would want to know, what's my impact? How many parts do I have out in the field that I may have to do a warranty or a recall on? Or maybe I'm not doing a recall, I'm just going to keep it hush, but I want to know my risk exposure. We all do it, not going to complain about it. You're going to, oh my gosh, I was an idiot. I could have fixed this and made it so much easier, or I could have made it better. We're not going to necessarily air our dirty laundry to the world, but we should at least know what the risk impact is on that before we just go shoving it through.
Okay, from Rick, does the view cost button look at standard, average, or last costs?
It's going to look based at what you have. Let me head back into this ECO here. If the part is set up for average costing, that's what my view cost is going to follow. If you have a mix of parts, the part you're working with is a manufactured part and we treat that at standard, but all of the purchased items are average because those prices change all the time. I believe the components are going to follow what the cost record is on them. The parent parts and the sub-assemblies are going to follow the cost that's set on those. Now, that being said, in part maintenance, I can have a cost that's different at the site than I do on the part detail. So make sure that those stay in sync because that can get very difficult to manage.
Okay.
If you're multi-plant, plant one could do average costing, plant B could be doing standard costing. Well, the transfer from one to the other is going to have a difference as well. Now I got to make sure how it rolls that up.
Okay, from Isaac, where do you view costs in the classic version?
So up here on the actions menu under revision, I can go to view costs. It's going to pull up the similar view cost screen and show me what the costing method is that it's using. The view cost screen is almost identical between classic and kinetic. The how you get to it's a little different.
Okay, from Caleb, is there a way to have parts checked out under an ECO that are still approved until a certain task is complete? It would be beneficial to be able to organize an engineering change but not impact production with an unapproved revision until the change is ready to take place.
You have to check the part out in order to work on it, or turn around and make a new revision for it. I didn't say this, Caleb, but I could have revision 1A test. And then once test is approved and all the components are done, I can copy that revision back into 1A and then go delete revision 1A test. Now, 1A is still out on the plant floor being made. 1A test is what I'm working on. So can I kind of trick the system? Yes. But you'd have to go redo the get details on any jobs that are running because you affected the engineering methods of manufacture and the job is still running the old revision A.
And just a note from Bruce, he says after a job's created, you could, the revision can be unapproved. So it just depends on how often you're making those jobs, I guess.
But as far as just working on the engineering, you have to check it out to do it or give it a new revision.
Okay, from Isaac, the mass checkout in the new Kinetic may be something people may not know about and be very helpful to show.
So I have a mass assign, mass checkout. These are new features that are sitting here inside behind the engineering workbench. So if I want to check out, I can select multiple parts and then do a mass checkout on the whole family. In the old classic version, you had to check the parts out one by one. So can I go up here in the old version and do an express checkout a part or add a part? I can turn around and do those real quick from here. It's just now, yes, there is a mass checkout feature that we can do. Go in and select our parts, do our search, find the parts that we want, and then check out the whole family.
And Isaac follows up with, and you can assign details from various revs in the mass checkout too.
Awesome. I haven't tried doing that one, Isaac.
And from Bruce, using a where used in Classic, you can mass checkout. This is a follow-up on her checking what's the best practice for checking things out to groups versus people. So do you set up new groups by project?
You can do it by project, but projects may have multiple engineering changes as we go through the project. It could have a design phase. It could have a, hey, let's run some prototypes. Then we have a production. Would those be all under the same ECO, or would one have a different control set to know, hey, this was what we did in this engineering change. We made the parts, then we produced a manufacturing prototype, found that we made mistakes, and we have another ECO that this is now where we're going to put the information regarding the changes to that.
And from
the
Bruce,
role would be attached to the task. So we just have to make sure that the quoter's role and the engineer's role are the same so that we could build it. A lot of the role codes of the tasks were so that we could send alerts and notifications, but that's broken in the software. It doesn't tie the person back to the task that it's assigned to. So I can't have a BPM send an email to the person that's attached to the task when the task starts. That is a known bug, not going to argue it, but there's a send alert and send alert on create or complete. It never does. They know there's a bug. It's been reported. Unfortunately, it's been a bug for 25 years.
And a request from Bruce, could you talk about revision compare dashboard?
I can turn around and use the revision compare. A lot of people, you're right, Bruce, don't know that this is out there or how to use it. So for that person that wanted to have a little bit of a bogus revision out there, but yet have the real one that's being manufactured, I can turn around saying this revision compare, am I comparing a quote to a quote, or am I comparing a quote to a job or a part? Am I comparing a part to a part? So when I specify, hey, let's go ahead and compare, we're just going to grab a part here. What revision are we looking at? We're looking at revision A, and I'm going to grab the next part. I did the all one. Okay. When I turn around and kick off this process, Epicor is going to show me what are the differences between them. I'll click my little compare button and it's going to say comparison number one, they deleted these but added these. The routing changes, this is the difference. This operation is not on this one, but it is on this one. So it's going to tell me all of the differences between the two revisions that I'm comparing. Now, I grabbed two not alike parts. Their name was close, but they are not the same part. So normally you wouldn't run a comparison like this, but you may want to look at, hey, I ran this job 2 years ago. This is the current engineering. What's the difference? I've got to run this again. What are the changes that happen to this? or what are the changes that happened in the subassembly? I would want to see what those are and be able to compare that. And I believe there used to be a report for this. I'm not seeing that in here anymore.
All right.
But it's a great way to compare, and whether it's a quote, meaning I quoted it a year ago and I'm now quoting it again, I can see what the differences are, what happened. Resources are going to change on the plant floor. We're going to have different vendors.
Okay, from Caleb, what exactly do the validate bill and mass assign buttons in Engineering Workbench do?
The validate bill is a great one, Caleb. This is rather shocking. I can have a bill of materials where I put the parent inside the child, which would be a bill of materials you can never make. Because in order to make the parent, I have to have the child. In order to have the child, I have to have another parent. That bill of materials will just go on indefinitely. The validate bill is also going to look at all the resource groups that I put in here, because yes, if I work in the engineering workbench, I'm going to pull this up here so that we can take a look at it. I can turn around and do a search on the resource group. I can do a search on the resource. I can also type in that field what I want. Here's the danger. You can type in a resource that's inactive. When you do a search on the dropdown, it's only going to show you what's active. But when you type it in, you could reference an inactive item. Because it's a valid, Epicor is just going to say, is this a valid, is it a real resource ID in the table? Doesn't always look to say, is it an active resource in the table? When I run my process to validate bill, it's going to go take a look and validate that my resources are real. It's going to take a look at my materials and go, they're not marked for runout, they're not inactive. And it's going to turn around and make sure that I didn't put any circular references where I'm making a parent-child relationship repeatedly. So that validate process is going to go out there and say, hey, did I really make something that can be made on my shop floor?
I got time for a few more. From Christopher, are you able to automate tasks to skip an approval step if change to revision is a change without an impact to part cost?
Can I put that in there? Yes. Can I also, on my task set, just come in here and say, hey, this task is completed? I can just mark it complete, put my notes in that part costs are not affected by this engineering change, process was averted. So I can just mark it as complete and move it on to its next step, even though I may not be that person that does the cost review.